Hi everybody, namaste. So excited to be talking to you from Thailand today. I'm back at home, my second home in Eden Villas Krabi, which is the home that my husband and I built for ourselves and then extended it out into villas that we now rent to people for holidays. Really special place for us, obviously, for that whole reason that we kind of built our dream here and everything, but also because of everything that it's enabled us to do. It's allowed us untouched nature. It's allowed us complete peace and quiet, even from the internet, even from here now. Like, we were just beginning to bring the internet into Eden. It hasn't been the most internet connected place until then. We've actually purposely kept it that way. We don't want big internet coming into here. We're kind of liking the idea that there's not so many radio frequencies or internet frequencies going out between all the villas and across the land. As more and more scientific research is developed about the effect that technology has on our health, and particularly our cellular health, we are recognizing that on a cellular level, actually all these radioactive devices around our ears and next to our hearts and our pockets and all that sort of thing isn't such a good idea. So my husband and I decided that actually, yeah, we would provide internet for our customers, but we would keep it on a really low level so that they managed to have a little bit of a detox as well. So that's a little bit frustrating at times, but at the same time keeps the harmony at Eden. So, that's been great. It's been a whirlwind coming back home. We knew we was going to have work and stuff to be done, but it's been, there's been a lot of work to do. But it's also been so wonderful just to come back and sort of downtime, I suppose, just sort of settle again into the life that we lived for 8 years here. And one of the amazing things for me has been able to come back and kind of just regroup in terms of my spiritual connection here. I was very lucky when we first moved here. I was unlucky enough to suffer depression, but I've also found myself very fortunate to have been able to work through that within the Thai style, if you like, with the Thai way, by through meditation and through my yoga, but also through the acceptance of Thai people, who are an amazing race of people. I mean, they're so accepting, almost to their own detriment sometimes, but they're very welcoming. They're very accepting of our differences. And certainly, like, one of the things I wanted to talk about today was really how I kind of found myself, without even really looking over here, just through having space to be able to explore. So this has kind of been one of my biggest things from living in Thailand, was kind of, being a foreigner in a foreign place. You're not necessarily accepted particularly. I've been to a lot of places in the world, and I've always been like the gringa, the white-skinned girl, kind of, trying to find her way, trying to make the friends. And sometimes it's been a lot harder than others. And one of the things that I really love about Thai people is that they're so welcoming. And certainly that's been our experience individually as young people. My husband and I both travelled in Thailand. And now coming as a family and having our family, both my daughters were born over here. So having that connection as well, and bringing the family over here, they're so welcoming. They love the kids. They'll take the kids off on adventures everywhere, and they're constantly, come, like show you this and show me that, and snakes and scorpions and spiders and everything. The sort of things that we run away from. The kids are kind of like, oh yeah, mum, so you can pick a gecko up like this, and you've got about 3 seconds before it drops its tail and lands on the floor. So things like that have been incredible to be able to come back to. I've kind of found, again, a peace in my heart that I lost when we came to England. And I didn't mean to lose it. It's just sort of slipped away. I found it very, very hard to meditate since we got to England. I've spoken to a lot of people about it, because I find that my meditation practice I found very hard to get into initially. And then it's deepened and deepened over the years. And then when we went to the UK, I took that, what I thought was an existing practice that wasn't going to change, because, I'd trained my mind and all that sort of thing. But I took it to the UK, and I very quickly found a lot of disturbance in my environment. And I really honestly can't pinpoint it to what it is. But it feels like, just so that you can get some idea of maybe what I'm talking about, it might even help you within your meditation practice if you practice. It's kind of this, like, I just want to physically demonstrate at the same time, because I just really, it's like this humming sound that's not even a sound. It's this frequency vibration that for me, I think feels very low frequency. I certainly find it very hard to shift. I come, I quieten myself down. I come into my breath work. I come into my mind. I begin to lose everything, as I've been taught and as I've practiced, just to gently drop everything away until you're finite. And then when I'm kind of in that zone, then that's when it becomes very much, a part of it's something I can't move myself. It's something that's around me that I can't shift away. It's like a vibration around me that is full on, and I can't get past it. And I've tried so many different things, like all the different ways that I've been taught by, the monks from the temples around here, from temples in silent retreat and stuff like that I went to, from the Babas and the Rishis in India, where I've studied under. I've taken every single practice that they've ever given me and tried to use it, and I'm still kind of floundering. I haven't given up, but it's just not there. And then I come back here and I'm like, ping, and it's just been fantastic. So this morning my husband had to drop someone at the airport 5 a.m. so I got up with him and I was just like, yes, brilliant. It's like the first day since we got here that I've really had an early start, and I just love the world at that time in the morning. Again, there's scientific proof that as the earth begins to turn and the sun begins to hit on it, there's a real wave of beautiful energy, like beautiful solar energy that hits the earth and then begins to sort of almost envelope it as we go round, as the world orbits. And so I kind of feel that you really get that energy first thing in the morning. There's kind of, as the sun goes down again, you begin to lose it. There's that quietening in the world, which is echoed here, certainly in Thailand, very easy to understand and to hear just from the nature, just from the insects. If nothing else, the insects will be able to tell you what time of day it is, which sounds crazy, but it is. First thing in the morning, you've got one set of insects that kind of just cause this low-level humming sound as they just kind of begin to recognize that the day's waking up. And then in the evening, you've got the cicadas who come out. So if you've ever been into a jungle, you'll recognize that cicadas is kind of sound. I can't do it very well. And these are like great big beetles that, again, rub their wings together super, super fast to make this really high-pitched and very loud sort of whirring sound. Towards the end of the video, you might get some of that because it's getting into the afternoon here now. And, again, so you feel the world wake up. You feel nature wake up. And it's such a special feeling. When you meditate at that time in the morning, you really begin to feel the vibration of nature. You feel the vibration of the world, I think, just come towards you and envelop you and pass through you and feed you. There's something that feeds you at that time in the morning. And I feel very, very lucky that I've been able to experience that today, especially because I was going to talk to you guys. I kind of thought, high energy, I want to be the best I can be when I'm talking out to the world. And so that's been really, really beautiful, and definitely something that I've really missed, because you just don't get it where I am in the UK anyway. And I'm in a suburb, so I'm not right in the centre of London or right in the centre of a city. I'm actually in a very green area. There's a lot of water around me. There's a lot of green space around me of England that I'm finding it very, very hard to get past, to be able to get into deeper meditation. So that's been amazing here. That's been wonderful, and that was kind of, I've taken that for granted, and that's been recognized, reflected back to me here. I've totally taken for granted how easily I used to kind of slip into that peaceful zone here, into that peaceful place, and how much I've missed it, how much I've missed being there as well, and the frustrations that I was feeling in England, and how much weight that's lifted off my shoulders, especially doing the work that I do, teaching meditation, teaching yoga, wanting to find that place for other people so that they can experience it and they can then build on for themselves. That's been a huge part of how I've managed to self-heal myself through a number of different situations. And I really want to be able to share everything that I've kind of learned out with people. And I'm beginning to think that actually one of the things that we all need to escape is the regular routine, for one, but also, the technology that surrounds us wherever we live in the Western world. I don't know where you're watching this from, but certainly in London and in parts of Spain that I've stayed in as well. And even actually in Bangkok as well, there's not a lot of peace in Bangkok, there's not a lot of peace there. And in parts of India, staying in Delhi, again, I found it very, very hard. Maybe it's just the vibration of people, that density of people over nature. Maybe it's that. I don't really know. Please comment and let me know if you've got any ideas, if you've got any kind of any vision or any kind of information you can give me about why that might be. And so, so I've been kind of back here practicing my yoga, practicing my meditation again. I just want to tell everybody who lives in a colder climate, if they practice yoga, you know what? Your muscles and your ligaments and your fascia tissue stretches and cracks so much easier in the warm countries. Like, I feel like I need to give myself a pat on the back for consistently practicing in a cold weather climate, because it's amazing the difference in my body just from having 2 days, I noticed, in the sun again, back in the kind of 30 odd degree warmth, and just being able to feel that actually your body just fully relaxes. My shoulders are much more relaxed, my neck, my back. And when I'm practicing, when I'm doing my asana practice, you can feel it so much more. The stretch is so much easier. And, I really recognize that. Like, I literally feel like I need to kind of give a shout out, like a high five to everybody practicing yoga or practicing any kind of sport, really, I suppose, or exercise, or physical practice in a cold weather climate, because it's just like the difference is mental. It's amazing. And yeah, so I'm kind of like, I'm excited to learn all these things again as well, like all those things, like I say, that I kind of just took for granted as part of my path. And I was improving myself, and I was growing, and I was practicing regularly. And I thought that a lot of the flexibility that came with my asana practice really was because of my practice. It was because of how dutiful I was. It was because of how, mindful I was about everything and the number of hours that I put into my practice. But now I've come to realize that actually it's just as much about how you're feeling and your surroundings as well. Like, I felt when I arrived here that I could relax and let go, because I had relaxed and let go. And when I, began to practice regularly, I've been able to go into poses that I had achieved quite easily beforehand, but found really hard in England for one reason or another. I mean, my mind is a lot busier there than it is here. You can definitely downtime here. There's definitely a peace around you when you're in the middle of nature. And I really am. I've got a mountain, a massive, great big mountain there. And the rest of it is just really gardens. And I mean, I can maybe sort of show you. We're sitting in our restaurant area here now, but if I just angle out, there's our Eden Villas Mobile. That's where we pick up our clients from the airport and stuff. But there's the beginning of the mountain there. Hold on, let me see if I can't take you out, because I'm using my mobile, so I should be able to just take you out. And I just want to show you the mountain if I can. So that's the beginning of the mountain. It's like an arm that comes around, and I just want to take you up if I can. They're round, and this is kind of how big this mountain gets. So it just goes all the way along. I'm just going to try and bring it around here so that you can see the very end of the mountain. This is the Khao Tong mountain range. So it's called Khao Tong because in the evening, when the sun goes down, the sun hits it directly. The sun's behind us now. Hits it directly and turns the whole side of it, just this beautiful golden colour. So this is like, we're at Eden now, just showing you this is the restaurant. This is where I've set myself up just because it's quiet. The kids are all down in the house and everything. And so I just kind of thought, right, well, come and sit up here, be nice and peaceful. I can get everybody to hear me okay, get a decent connection. Yeah, there's just a little bit of a way around our Eden. But it's been so interesting going back home as well, because I found so much information out. I mean, this is what's amazing about the Western world. We're real seekers for information. You probably recognize that. I don't know. I necessarily did. But what used to frustrate me about the schooling system for my children when we were over here was that it was quite rote learning. It was, there's a lot of, this is the information that you need to digest. Take it, write it down, absorb it, and then regurgitate it out, which I know we do still do a lot of in the West, but there is a lot of problem finding, whereas here there's not quite so much. There's not a lot of thinking outside the box. There's not a lot of questioning. Wholly to do with their culture more than anything else, I think. It's very much a community-based culture, Thai culture. They rely very heavily on their families and the extended families to support them through work and through childcare and that sort of thing, whereas obviously as Westerners we don't. We tend to kind of look outside the family unit for childcare for the majority of people, because a lot of people are still working. They, live a long way away from their families. I certainly, my family, my mum and dad live in Spain. My sisters just moved from Egypt to Spain to be closer to my parents. My outlaws, my husband's parents, they live in Spain as well. So I don't really have a lot of support around us directly, and we didn't have certainly over here. So I'm not really that used to it in the UK, so it's kind of fine. But yeah, certainly it gives you that kind of that isolation out here when you haven't got anybody else to look after. And I think that's the thing. That's why it's so important to have this community around you, because actually if your family aren't huge, then at least you've got the village around you. And there's a lot to be said for it, a lot. They really are very, they're happy to help anybody at any time, which I think is a really lovely thing. I have a lot of really good friends in England who will help me all the time, but I don't feel like I could just ask my next door neighbour, or I could ask, somebody down the road, if you like, just out of the blue, if they could help me move something or something. I just don't have that feeling. Whereas here, I'd quite happily run down to the road and be like, oh, can you help me with something, please? I need something moving, or there's a snake in the house and I'm freaking out. And, and then I try and explain that I don't want it killed. I just want it moved. And, there's 3 children and all that sort of stuff. And so that sense of community, I really appreciate being back here as well, So it's kind of those sorts of things that I've been missing and that I feel like I've fallen back into. And of course the nature, like you've just seen, we have 3 sets of monkeys on our mountain. 3 sets. So we have the gibbons calling in the morning. We have the bare-faced red macaques, which are so they have these red-faced bear macaques. They have these red face and this red bum. They have really long hair, like red gingery hair, kind of all over their bodies. And they're really, really shy, so you don't see them much. But they live in troops of about 30 to 40, and they're constantly going across the mountain, like just picking off the new shoots of leaves, just picking up the new flowers, the beans that grow on the sator trees, which is like the stinky beans that they cook in Thailand. They are constantly sunbathing on the rocks at certain times of the day. They like to watch the sun go down, we've discovered. The gibbons will come from one side of the mountain to the other to watch the sun go down. They climb really, really high up to one of the trees on the top of the mountain. And they just sit there until the sun goes down, and then they climb down, and go off and do whatever else they next do. But it's wonderful to have that connection with nature, to be able to spend that amount of time in nature where you can recognize what things are doing. And it's from the monkeys on the mountain, kind of quite an obvious one, down to the ants on the floor. I spent 10 days in a silent retreat in a monastery in southern Thailand, in Suratani, and it was fabulous for just being able to connect with nature, if nothing else. We got up at 4 a.m. and we went to bed at like 10, I think it was, or I went to bed earlier than that, I think. But I found most of my days where I couldn't speak to anybody else, I ended up just focusing in on nature. I learned things like how ants communicate and, how they drink, so I never knew how ants drink. So I would sit at the bottom of this tree and be meditating and trying to meditate. And after an hour or something like that, and I'm, getting a bit tired and very hot because there's no fans around and you're just dependent on the breeze coming through, all the foliage and stuff to be able to cool you down. So you kind of park yourself in a position where you're going to get into nature around you. Often sort of come out and just be like, I'm zenned out. That's it. I'm done. Now where will my focus lie? And as a Westerner, we have very quick, very busy minds. And so I decided that I would try to just keep everything in my focus quite localized. And this became kind of my little go-to practice. So I would sit under this tree and I would just let my eyes drift and wait until my attention was caught by something. So it's usually something like a butterfly, a bird, something that's coming in, and yet your attention can't follow them too quickly because they're flying. They fly in and they fly out. We've got a butterfly buzzing around us now. So it often became, that my attention would be taken by something that would come into my sphere of awareness, and then it would pass out of my sphere of awareness. And so I had to then maintain my calm and wait for something else to pick my attention. And 9 times out of 10, it would be the ants. It would be these kind of like amazing creatures that you can love or you can hate. Like they annoy me when they come into my kitchen and start cutting off my fruit and my stuff on the side of our kitchen work surface. But to watch them is fascinating. To watch how they communicate is fascinating. You know, and I didn't really realize that different groups of ants communicated differently. I mean, I've watched, you know, the kind of wildlife documentaries and David Attenborough is one of my heroes and stuff like that. But actually spending hours of my life being able to absorb everything that was going on and being able to intuitively kind of come to a conclusion about why these things, you know, why the ants or why the butterfly or why the beetle or why the bird was behaving in this way, why the monitor lizard was behaving in this way. It takes just concentration and awareness and focus, you know, which is kind of all, you know, great coming from my yoga practice. It's all very much stuff that I'm aware of, but it was a different way of practicing it. So it was just about projecting that out, actually learning about something by giving it your complete attention. So I discovered that red ants, they will find something strange in their area that they're kind of constantly patrolling. They constantly patrol the same areas. They send search parties out to find different things, you know, but they constantly patrol these one areas around their nest. And then when they find something different in their area, they go and find a friend before they explore it properly. So this is what I learned. So I would place a little dry leaf with a little drop of water because it was baking hot when I did it. It was like April in Thailand is like the driest of the dry seasons. And I was in Suratani, which is even more dry and arid than Krabi can get at that stage. And so I would put a little bit of water in a dry leaf and then just place it kind of in their way to see what was going to happen. I thought, you know, that'd be nice. I'm giving them a drink of water, you know, doing a nice thing for nature. And I was just thrilled to be able to sit there and watch them for a long time. I've never, ever given myself that period of time where I would just sit and watch and try and learn. And they would, so one of the ants would come down, they would discover it, they would immediately go off and find a friend. They would then bring that friend back, and it would be the next available ant pretty much 9 times out of 10. They would then bring that friend back, and both of them would start to, what I consider to be assessing the situation. And, you know, they would look at one and they would look at the water, they would decide whether or not it was, you know, actually what they thought it was, it seemed to me, you know, and then one of them would make the bold move of tasting the water and literally tasting. So they would go up, they would stick their head in and they'd come back again. So they'd literally tasted it, you know, like a dog would taste food or smell food before it would eat it or something like that. Like the way babies just always put everything in their mouth to be able to get that sensory feeling. And then as soon as they discovered it was water, it would go and talk to its other little mate. Its other little mate would have a drink itself, job done. And then the pair of them would run off and go and get a load of other ants, and come back down and begin to drink laboriously. So, and then I discovered that the bum of these red ants are made up of what do you call them? They're like sort of parts of a shell, but kind of they elongate as they grow. The vertebrae, if you like, the vertebrae of the shell of the bottom of the ant would begin to expand. So you'd have all of them like this dark, and then they'd suddenly go wider and wider and wider as it filled with water. So they were filling up their bottom, if you like, full of water, and then carrying that back off. And sometimes they would literally be almost staggering under their own weight from it. And that was crazy to me as well, because I'm like, well, surely this isn't just for them then. Where are they taking it? You know, why would you absorb so much that you were heavy under the weight? And I went through a lot of thought processes over, like, you know, greed. Like, you know, greed is very commonplace attribute in Western societies. Well, in human society, I think. I don't think it's just Westerners. And I would wonder often, you know, where are they going? You know, and I couldn't often follow them all the way up the tree or all the way out into their burrow or their ant nest. But it, you know, it fascinated me, and being able to spend that time with nature, being able to spend time just looking up and working out why it is that things do the things that they do, and coming to that level of understanding. And then I realized that actually, so I'm giving myself this time to understand nature, right? This thing around me that I love, that I always have loved. I've always been very connected to nature. I'm very much an animal lover, and I've never killed, you know, things unnecessarily. Even when I was a child, you know, I used to cry when the boys in our school were pulling off the legs of the, you know, the daddy long legs, you know, the flies that fly everywhere. And I used to, you know, be very upset by things like that. And I still do get upset, you know, if I see anything needlessly destroyed. I'm, you know, it's one of my real pet hates. And so, yeah, and then I thought to myself, I don't know if I've actually ever given myself that time to be able to understand how I work. And I'm not sure that I've even extended that courtesy out to the people that I really love. Like, have I ever stopped and really studied how my husband, for example, you know, calms down, like his signature method of de-stressing at the end of the day, or even waking up? Have I actually noticed, like with my children, how they think, how I'm take myself into that position of observation and just how they're going to work these things out. Like with kids, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in their mind that they don't necessarily keep to themselves. They verbalize it. Certainly my two daughters will talk themselves through everything that they do, which is funny to watch and to listen to. But it's kind of indicative as well of how their minds work, how that they're constantly processing things and they're just talking it out to themselves, like they're making it real. This is real, right? The first step of being able to manifest anything is being able to take the thought and put it out there. So whether or not you say it or whether or not you write it or whether you go and do it, which is the optimum, really, just go and do the thing that you wanted to do rather than sit and talk about it, discuss it and talk yourself in and out of things. I wondered about that and I started to then give that to my family when I arrived back after my 10 days. I began to give that more and more to my family to be able to just sit back and observe how they react in things, not try to jump in, not try to micromanage, not try to direct. Like as a parent, you tend to find yourself going, no, no, not that way, do it this way. But actually, I learned to just let go a little bit and let my daughters and my son try things out a little bit more for themselves. Notice how, the sequence of events that allows my husband to feel like he's kind of properly relaxed at the end of the day and be able to make that more achievable for him, more like let that be a smoother process for him. So for example, when he comes in from work, I know that he likes to go into his room. He has an office. He likes to go into his office. He likes to take his bag off. He likes to, get everything out for the day, make sure that all the final emails are done before he then comes and joins the family. So he'll spend maybe half an hour or something like that in his office, just closing off from the day. Just, he's had his long trip home. He spends over 2 hours getting into his office, each way. And so that's what he likes to do. So that way I leave his office nice and clean, make sure it's clean, make sure all the teacups and everything's been taken out from the morning, make sure it's all clean in there, there's no dust or that sort of stuff. And then make sure that the children have all been fed and stuff so that they're not, screaming and crying and, getting on everybody's nerves because they're hungry or whatever. Make sure that when he comes in, everything has been almost done so that he can downtime before he then comes and joins the family. And what I've noticed being able to do that for him is that he will actually come out quicker. And that this is one of the things that I've just noticed recently in the past couple of months, that actually if that process is made smoother for him, he rejoins the family a lot quicker. It's a lot easier for him to de-stress when he comes into that kind of environment that I've enabled. And so that feels really nice, being able to do that for someone that you love, being able to, be mindful enough, being present enough to be able to do that. So one of the other things that I kind of have done for my children, or specifically for my son, is starting him in a yoga practice in the morning. So they've all intermittently practiced yoga since they've been little. My daughters were particularly excited by yoga practice when they were babies, when they were young, and they wanted to be around mum. And when mum would get on the mat, they wanted to kind of, do what mum was doing. And there was a lot of climbing and there was a lot of hanging off of hair. And there's a lot of, climbing up legs and using mum's body as a bridge and an apparatus for play and stuff like that, which was fine. I learned to let go of my selfless practice as soon as I started practicing yoga around my children. How can I have this selfless practice, this practice that is all about, being in one space, in the one place of mind? And he said to me, actually, the back to yoga, that yoga of your devotion and love is really one of the only places that you can sometimes find that, is because by being selfless, you're doing everything for everybody else all at once. And so you're letting go of everything that is the ego. So by letting go of, because there's ego in your asana practice as well. We see it all the time. We see it on Instagram. We see it in Facebook Lives. We see it in everything, people demonstrating how you can do things. But there's a certain level of ego in it. What I was taught in India, which again kind of blew my mind at the time, was that actually as a guru and a seer, which was the old way of passing down the yogic practice, was with one-on-one, the yogi and the seer, the yogi and the student, the guru and the student. That was their relationship. And so you wouldn't demonstrate so much as teach and allow that person to then find their space within themselves, to find that connection from their mind to their body within themselves by just feeling how their body would be placed. So that was fascinating to me as well. Like I kind of felt like that was going to be my journey coming home from India back to Thailand, because there aren't the teachers, there aren't the gurus here that I can continue on with, or felt that I could. I like to go to any type of yoga class because I always feel like you get something from anybody's class, but certainly coming back here, I knew that I was going to have to shelve that learning. So that gave me a sense of peace of mind and peace of heart to be able to come back here to Thailand and start practicing. One of the other things that I found as well then, when I was practicing with my children all around me, was that I needed to develop the ability to be able to let go of the constraints that I realized or recognized that I put on myself in my yogic practice. So, for example, your alignment and that sort of thing. As a yoga teacher, you're very aware of alignment for your students. You want them to safeguard their physicality the whole time. You don't want people to walk away from your class going, oh, God, my shoulder's killing me. I don't know what I did, but it was that one, when we had to put our arm back. I don't want my students to come away with that. I would rather they came out with deeper relaxation than having really worked their body to the point of, feeling sore. And so that was one of the other things that I kind of had to let go, was that idea of alignment, because when you watch children practicing and when you're enabling students to practice who are younger and kind of much more flexible, much more naturally physical, you have to kind of allow their own exploration of self as well, physically. So they're going to put themselves into a position where I'm going to be like, oh my God, like the neck, the shoulders, the wrists, because obviously I'm used to kind of teaching adults. And then when I recognized teaching children through teaching my own children, that actually they would get into these positions, and whereas I might even find it hard to breathe in those positions, they would be laughing openly, and then they kind of roll around back again into another position. And the flexibility in their bodies through lack of a sedentary lifestyle, through lack of age, is actually a gift for them to be able to explore now as well. So what I do with my children and through my children's classes now as well is enable them to explore their body almost however, because as much as alignment is important, it's more important for me that they can express themselves naturally and that they can explore themselves naturally than it is to just follow the guidelines of yoga. I feel like following the guidelines really begins to bring the boundaries in. And I implore everybody and I urge everyone to really let go of some of the things that you think are right. Let go of those control barriers. Let go of those kind of the voices of reason, if you like, sometimes, in whatever you're doing, yogic lifestyle is a lifestyle. It's not just simply a practice, once a day or once a week or whatever. It's actually about bringing the yogic philosophy and the yogic lifestyle into your everyday life. So to be able to express yourself fully in what you feel is an amazing gift to be able to instill in somebody or allow for somebody. It's a great act of love to be able to accept somebody no matter whether they're saying things right or wrong, and just to be able to try to understand. I feel like that's something that you can practice quite openly with children, because they can't necessarily express themselves. But it's a lot harder with adults. It's a lot harder, especially with the older generation, who automatically feel that because they're older than you, they know more and they demand more respect and should command more respect from people who are younger than them. I think it's wonderful if you can almost give them that with the age-old knowledge of acceptance. If you can just accept whatever people are saying because it's their belief. You don't have to accept it as your belief. Don't get me wrong. You don't have to say, right, okay, they're older than me. They're right. They know better than I do. That's not always the case. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you don't have to constantly challenge people to be right. It's all about perspective. People who have been through different generations from us are going to have completely different perspective from us because their experiences have been completely different. people of a younger generation are going through that same thing. You went through it. I went through it. We've all gone through it. We're all still going through it. Nobody's right or wrong. It's just a perspective. It's just where you come from, dependent on your experience, dependent on the lifestyle that you've lived, dependent on the influences of your family, of your parents, dependent on the education that you've had, dependent on the culture that you've been brought up in. You know, there are so many things that shape our world and shape our perspective of our world. And I think it's really important to allow tolerance and acceptance for other people who have had a different existence to you. And just to bring that into perspective, that's everyone. That's every single other person in the world, whether you were brought up with them or not, whether they live under the same roof as you or not, whether you feel like you're their, you know, almost their personality mirror or not. You know, you owe it to yourself and you owe it to other people to keep an open mind about everybody else's perspective. You know, again, you don't have to agree with them. They can be coming from a completely foreign place to you, one that you don't understand, you don't really respect, you know, whatever. But you have to kind of give them and yourself the acceptance and the tolerance to be able to just listen and not to openly criticize, not to pick apart. You know, there's a lot of that goes on. I find, like, especially with children as well, children will try to express themselves and immediately they're told no. They're told, actually, that's not the way. Actually, no, that's wrong. This is right. But who's to say that their perspective from their angle, you know, their age isn't right? You know, why can't we just explain what we need, what we're having, what we're struggling with? So, for example, as an adult, you might kind of be a little bit like, you know, actually, your perspective on homework as to a child is all wrong. You need homework because you need to maintain that level of learning. You need to reinforce what you've taken in that day. You need to go over and over because we know that that's a way that our mind absorbs information, and you're going to be asked to regurgitate this information later on in life for your exams or for whatever. So, you know, one of the ways that we know how we can train our brain is through repetitive practice. So you need to do it like this. I have this conversation with my children so many times I can't even tell you. They hate homework. They're like, I've worked hard at school all day long. Why do I have to come home and do homework? And, you know, I go through these ideas of, okay, so we're trying to reinforce what you've learned, you know, because also the teachers, you know, they're reinforcing with everybody. If one person sort of says, I don't like homework, I'm not doing homework, then that opens the floodgates to, you know, the whole class saying the same thing. The whole class being like, okay, you know, I'm not doing homework. I don't want to do homework. I've had enough of homework. And then before you know it, the order in school has not been maintained, is not there for anybody else. But on some days, I quite happily will say, okay, don't do it. Don't do it today. You know what will happen. You know that if you go in the next day and your homework hasn't been done, then you know what the consequences are for that. And if you're choosing not to do it, then don't do it. That's fine. Okay? I respect your choice. I respect the fact that you understand the consequences and that you've decided that, you know what, today's it's just not happening for you, and that you're going to be able to go into the teacher tomorrow and say to them, look, I didn't do my homework last night in this because blah, 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 because I wasn't feeling it, because I didn't understand it, because I just wanted to sit and watch television and relax. I felt like I'd worked really hard at school. And I want you to be able to feel like you can make those choices for yourself, because ultimately speaking, you're going to have to go through life making choices for yourself. And the better you get at making choices, the easier life is going to be for you, I think, because you're going to always have your own back in that sense. If you make a choice for yourself that is from your heart, that is, what you need to do for you, then I don't think you're ever really going to regret that choice. Because even if the choice was to go and get told off the next day that you didn't do your and relax and lie and get some sleep or read a book, just take yourself out of the world of learning and into the world of kind of escapism, fantasy fiction, something like that. And that will give you the rest that your brain needed. You just couldn't do any more. Then I think you should be able to go into school tomorrow and you'll be able to have that conversation with your teacher and say, Miss, I didn't do it last night. I will catch up tonight, but last night I just couldn't handle it. I just found that everything that I was doing was wrong. Whatever. Just explain yourself, to them. And that will be the best way of you going forward, because they will understand. I've got a little friend hand on my arm. They will understand that, you weren't able to handle it, they will understand on some level that you must have had a conversation with somebody about it, because you're coming in and you're explaining exactly why, and you're saying that you understand the consequences and that you will in fact continue on and do what's been asked of you. You just couldn't do it last night. And I think that should be allowed in our world. There's so many people, there's so much stress, and there's so many people suffering from stress and suffering from then the lifestyle that you adopt to be able to calm yourself down. Alcohol and drug abuse, and whether that be recreational drugs or pharmaceutical drugs, and pushing so hard all the time to do and to be and to have everything that you feel you need, for me indicates a real lack of good decision making, apart from anything else. If you feel like you're under the weather, if you feel like you're sick, if you feel like your body needs to rest, then I don't believe that you should have to make the decision whereby you have to go into work. This is one of the things that frustrates me most, is that, if you know that your body needs to rest and relax, if you know that your eyes are hurting from looking at the screen for so long, stress is the thing that keeps you going. Stress is that little voice in the back of your head that says, well, you've only got a couple more hours, and if you get those couple more hours done, then tomorrow, at least you haven't got to go in and face 180 emails. At least you're going to have that freedom, that it won't be so stressful for you tomorrow. That's stress talking. That's not logical thinking. That's stress. That's that in your mind the whole time. And that's something that I'm really, throughout my work, I'm constantly trying to get people to avoid, is that stress decision, where you decide actually stress is better than the consequence of looking after yourself. Because that's basically what it is. The stress of now is actually better for me than the consequence of looking after myself. How have we got into this with ourselves? In the UK, the NHS is under the most stress it's ever been. It's the least effective it's ever been, when we've got more money going into it than we've ever had, when we technically should have more staff than we've ever had, because we've got that opportunity, because there are more people demanding it. We should have all this. We don't have it. And one of the things that I think is become obvious to me is that are not looking after themselves at all, and this has provided a huge stress on our services that are designed to really pick up where personal responsibility it is. Really, it's your own after yourself. It's your own responsibility to recognize what is good for your body, what is not good for your body, what you are using as a crutch when you need it to be able to de-stress, because we live in a very, very stressful world. I'm not blaming anybody specifically. I'm saying this is the world we live in. And to be able to survive in this world, in this generation that we're living in now, we need to be able to take responsibility for our health. We need to be the ones to stand up and say, actually, no, I come before that. And I think we should be able to have that without the penalty of feeling like we're going to lose our jobs, without the penalty of you can only have 5 days sick a year. I mean, what is that all about? Say if you get something like dengue fever on holiday, for example, you're laid up for 3 weeks. So where is the justification in that? You're laid up for 3 weeks because you've got one illness in the year. The rest of the year you're fine. Somebody else catches a cold, they've got really bad flu, and they're just struggling into work, giving everybody all the germs and everything, because they've already had 3 days off because they had a real bad stomach infection that they're not sure where they picked up, but they've already had 3 days off. They've only got 2 more paid days. They don't want to go without pay, because who can ever afford it? So they're struggling, and they give everybody else in the office the flu or some sort of a sickness bug or that sort of thing. I mean, again, why are we not able to take responsibility for our own health? Why are we constantly picking stress over our own responsibility for health? That's something that I'm always asking my clients to do, is put yourself first. I do it through my self-love programs. I do it through my life coaching, my spiritual coaching. I do it through yoga. Put yourself first. Don't push yourself. Don't take the stress from your work life or your home life or just life in general and bring it into your yoga practice. This is somewhere you can be kind to yourself. This is a place where you can allow yourself just to be as you are that day. If you have a cold, I encourage people to get onto the mat. I do. because I get onto the mat myself with a cold, and I know how it clears my head. I know how it clears my breathing. I know how it makes me feel better. I know how it encourages my systems to detoxify. I know that it helps me. I might not feel like it. I might be getting out of bed thinking, oh, I can barely breathe. How am I going to do this? Well, you work slowly through things. You feel into your body. You do the asanas, all the work, the stuff like, that you can do. You don't do the stuff that, I wouldn't be then practicing a handstand, for example. I wouldn't be then practicing something that required, I wouldn't be doing my pranayama. I wouldn't be doing a J breath. I wouldn't be, those sorts of things would have to be let go in favor of myself that day, in favor of my physical self that day. So kind of, I feel like that's always been my big message out to everybody, because the one time that I forgot to do it for myself was the one time that I went straight downhill, as we briefly discussed, like in my first video last week. So I'm kind of, one of the things that I'm loving about being back here is the disconnection from all of that. The disconnection from the internet, where those emails, those WhatsApps, those, everything is just constantly pinging, notifications coming up everywhere I go. You turn your phone on, there's a million notifications. You turn your computer on, there's a million notifications. All these things that keep you occupied, keep you busy, keep you from downtiming, and we're getting addicted to it. We're getting addicted to that idea that we are so needed in the world, that we're so required by other people, that people rely on us so much that we will respond straight away. And even if it's 9 o'clock at night and somebody sent a email through, my husband will still be sitting there going, like, I better reply to this, I better reply to this. Well, they've sent it through at 9 at night. It must be important, And it's kind of like they're only replying at 9 o'clock at night because that's the first opportunity they've had to do it, or the first opportunity they've given themselves to be able to do it, I feel like sometimes it would be a good thing if that email was then left until 9 o'clock the following morning, so that method of working wasn't encouraged. Because it's certainly something that I've seen going back to into the UK, that everybody is running to stand still. Everybody's super stressed, super exhausted, unhappy and unhealthy because of their health. They can feel they're not happy. They know they drink too much. They know they smoke too much. They know they are, taking medication when they perhaps don't need to, but it's just a quick, easy fix. I've got a headache. I'll just take an ibuprofen. I won't even bother with the paracetamol. I'm just going to take the ibuprofen. I'm going to hit it hard. And that's the method of our looking after ourselves, is just to hit it hard. I have a friend who is having to go through cancer treatment, and I can't tell you how much I worry about her. And I worry about her specifically because, again, everything is hit it hard and fast. But hard and fast is not always the right way, especially when you're dealing with, your body, which actually doesn't really do anything hard and fast. If you think about how our bodies react to things, it takes a long time for the toxins to build up in our body before our body begins to manifest actual dis-ease with it. It'll take a long time. Initially, our body just calms everything down. It works, it burns everything off, and then it kind of tries to find itself back into a place of balance. It's constantly trying to rebalance itself, our bodies. Physically, mentally, emotionally, we're always trying to bring ourselves back into balance. Through our thought process, we do the same thing. Through our physicality, we do the same thing. We're always trying to find a balance. So why is hit it hard finding a balance? That seems to be going boom, like that, and so like I always encourage everybody just to kind of ease yourself into something, feel your way into something. Sometimes I know you don't have that opportunity, and everybody must go their own way for sure. But this hit hard and fast approach to your physicality by taking an ibuprofen or something like that quickly, just because it will hit it hard and fast, just so that you can then crack back on again, is not what your body's telling you. Your body's telling you, calm down, slow down. If it's like a headache or something like that, maybe it's telling you that you need to drink more water, that you need to stop looking at the screens. You need to rest your eyes. Maybe it's telling you late night and that you need to gather. Maybe it's telling you that you need to, calm down all the thoughts in your mind, that all this constant is beginning to take its toll. It's beginning to give you a headache, when the thoughts don't stop. Then that is time. That's time to recognize that your body is reflecting something back to you. And then you need to then know yourself and your body well enough to be able to then self-help. Okay, this is kind of like one of the things that I go through a lot with people, is you need to be able to understand yourself well enough to be able to self-help. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. You know, if you are constantly reaching for the easy fix, if you don't spend any time looking at how it is that you work in yourself, then you will never know how to help yourself, you know, because what you'll get used to is going straight for the ibuprofen, going straight for, I don't know, the painkillers for, you know, the pain in your lower back, because you're not quite sure how you got it, but you still need to crack on. You still want to go to the gym, so you'll just take a painkiller for your lower back, and then you'll get back down the gym, and that will be fine. You know, you'll be back to being, you know, yourself, and eventually the pain will go. It will ease itself out. And my experience, the pain doesn't go with lower back problems if you get straight back down the gym. In my experience, rest helps. You know, massage, again, self-care, you know, being able to kind of self-massage yourself, use some essential oils or some, you know, kind of holistic health form of being able to kind of relax those muscles, enabling yourself to really calm down all the stress and everything in your life, so that the muscles in your body aren't holding tension, so that everything is able to relax. And heat therapy is a great way of being able to relax your muscles. You know, hot and cold, that's what a lot of the physiotherapists now tell athletes to do. You know, pro athletes, they tell them it's the hot and cold therapy. You know, go from that, because your muscles, you know, will then be warmed into being able to relax and submit. And then cold therapy enables them to kind of just then contract and release some of that, like that lactic acid, I think it is, that builds up in the muscles. You know, again, we need to go to somebody like a physiotherapist, somebody who's going to be able to help you with your muscle tension, to be able to specifically talk about things like that. But it's interesting how everybody always goes for the quick fix, because they're still in that level of stress. If you take yourself out of that level of stress and you think about, well, how did I get here? What did I do? You'll soon be able to track back the path of self-help. It's like, actually, it was because I pulled my back when I lifted that heavy box, and I didn't lift it properly. I didn't lift it in the right way. I wasn't thinking. I just kind of pull. And because you weren't thinking, and because you just considered yourself able enough to be able to do it, that's where the accident happened. And I think that, you know, okay, you can learn a couple of things from that. Next time, for example, if you go through that whole mind process, you're going to recognize that that was how I put myself out last time. Let's not do that again, because that required like a massage and a day of being laid up so that my back could, you know, just rebalance itself. And I think, you know, that those things are really important. And it's not just your physicality, it's your mental self as well, and your emotional self. You know, what was that emotional trigger that got me to respond like that, that made me so angry so quick, that made me want to cry instantly? You know, why was I triggered by that? Why has that upset me so much? You know, why has that happened? How have I got into that stage? And why is that, you know, what's the underlying root for that trigger? You know, why is it, do I feel like that comment that he or she made has made me feel like I'm not good enough? Has it made me feel like I am not able, that I don't have the ability, you know, that my training, have I felt like then, you know, if I'm not able, does that make me feel like they've challenged the knowledge that I spent 3 years at university, or 5 years, or 7 years, whatever, you know, training to do? That made me feel like, you know, all of that wealth of information that I studied for hours and hours, that, you know, all of that time that I put in has just been belittled like that with one flippant comment. You know, and that's what's triggered me maybe. You know, but it's knowing yourself well enough so that next time you don't get triggered. Because the thing is, you get triggered, you then respond. So whether or not you respond emotionally by being angry, or whether you respond through, you know, your vocabulary and you talk that person down, or you talk yourself into a position of understanding, or of being the one in the higher power position from that conversation, then you are automatically allowing yourself to be affected by somebody else's actions and somebody else's words. And this is kind of the root for a lot of the problems that are going on in the world, you know, from the smallest people up to, you know, the oldest people. They are allowing themselves to be affected by things that other people are doing that they have no control over, you know. And this is something that I really worked hard on over here in Thailand was to let go of my expectations of what other people should do and what other people should give me and how other people should respond to me and, you know, those sorts of things. And I soon came to realize that you can't please everybody, that actually being able to let go and observe almost as an outsider from my own body. This is what I kind of do now is I take my mind out and I just watch and I listen. So I can be sitting there and I, you know, maybe I'm listening and I've got that kind of stance around me where I'm, oh, yeah, yeah, lovely, okay, great, you know, or yeah, okay, I'm listening to somebody. But on the other side of it, I'm just watching their body language. I'm watching how they are projecting this information, how important it is for them to be heard, because that's key. You know, if they're really projecting this out vehemently with a lot of passion, it's something they're very passionate about and it's something that they really feel they know and they own and they, you know, they have a right to speak on this subject. Now, if you then go in with somebody who feels very passionate about something and you go in and you tell them that they're wrong in any way, shape or form, you are going to come up against a lot of consistent dissonance, a lot of, you know, hang on a minute, I'm trying to find back out again where I am. I'm trying to find, but that's not right. But I know this. I know where I'm coming from and I'm right here, you know, and that means a lot to a lot of people. And so again, to be able to ascertain whether or not it's even worth entering into a conversation because of the passion levels means that you have allowed yourself to accept and to tolerate something. That's the first two good lessons. And then you've also allowed yourself to learn from the other person and to find out what they're passionate about and how they communicate. Because you want to be able to go in with, okay, you know, that's fine. I understand where you're coming from. If you disagree, you want to be able to align your conversation into the point where you're not triggering their anger buttons or their, you know, their hurt buttons, if you like, the fear button, essentially. You know, the fear that they don't know actually what they thought they knew, or the fear that you think you might know more, therefore you're right overriding them. The power switch is there. There's a lot of subtle frequencies to be able to learn from, but certainly to be able to sit there and to listen to people and to allow them to talk and to engage in how it is that they're communicating, rather than just what they're saying, how it is they're communicating. They're using their bodies, they're using their face a lot, they're using their hands, they're very expressive. You know, all those things can help to show you how important this is to them. And then you've got to put it back onto yourself. So then you think to yourself, okay, so if I talk about something that's really passionate and important to me and somebody cuts me off dead, how does that make me feel? Not good. You know, again, that's when I begin to get triggered, because I feel like you're challenging me and you're challenging something that I feel like I know. And so I'm not going to react well in that situation. So then I think, okay, so I don't want to challenge that person. I just want to open their minds, perhaps, to there's another way, you know, like ways of talking to people are documented by psychologists. You can talk to certain people one way, you can talk to other people another. There's loads of different variants. But one of the things that I think is prevalent across the whole board is listening. You know, just being able to listen to somebody and try to accept what they're saying, understand that they're passionate about it, but to also be able to hold in your heart the truth of your knowledge, of your life, of your experience. And you don't have to then say that to anybody. You don't have to then, you know, overpower them with your knowledge and your experience and how right you are. You just need to be able to accept that that's their perspective and their way of working. And you need to then be able to kind of accept that your way might be different, but your way doesn't need to be heard necessarily. Do you know what I'm like? I don't know if I'm explaining myself properly. I hope I am. I think it's about empathy. I think a lot of it is about compassion and empathy and being able to let go of things that you feel, you know, you are right on for the sake of somebody else who also feels that they're right. You know, it's dependent on what it is, obviously. Things like, you know, racism and sexism and, you know, ageism as well. You know, those sorts of things really tend to trigger lots of buttons, and that's when you find it hard to be able to control this thing. You know, I find it, and I've been speaking to a man in a shop, I'd like this, and I'd like this, please, and I'm looking for this. And then my husband will come right over me, and they will then talk directly above me, literally, because my husband's up there, and they will literally talk above me and give my husband all the answers that I've been asking for. and I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me. And at first I was very much like really riled by it. I'm a Western girl. I've been brought up with, my parents have been, brought up me or encouraged me to be a very intelligent girl, somebody who, goes forward and asks for what they want in life, someone who is confident enough to go out and speak to any person in the world, be they older, younger, richer, poorer, high power, low power, whatever, to be able to converse equally with everybody. And I, sometimes I found it really, really hard to deal with that. And then I realized that actually from taking a step back, from just watching what goes on in the society and the culture over here, from watching other women in the culture over here, I recognized that this wasn't just about me being a woman. This is actually about a ranking, a kind of a ranking that goes on between the men over here. It's a very patriarchal society still. And I'm obviously not used to that. Although, the UK, a lot of women would disagree that we are, not quite equal. And I don't want to get into that debate now. We certainly have a lot more equality than a lot of other countries that I've ever been to, a lot of other countries that I've ever been to. And I think that's made me quite grateful for the way that I've been brought up and the opportunities that I've had in life. But when you sit back and you watch and you just take on board what's going on and you bring your awareness out into the bigger scale of things, rather than just the confines of the conversation that you're in now, rather than just that tiny little bubble that you're in at that point where you're having this moment, if you step back outside the bubble and you look and you bring all that awareness and all that consciousness into that conversation, you begin to let go. You begin to find a peace because there's an understanding. There's an understanding in higher awareness and higher consciousness that doesn't. Okay, so I was talking about being in a bubble and being able to allow people to then vent their way and express themselves and get that passion and everything out. And for you not to absorb it as a personal threat, not to absorb it as a way of confrontation, but actually just being able to absorb it as the person that they are and the perspective that they've come from. I've found it very easy then to be able to then divert a conversation around. If I felt like something is I'm dicing, like they say, never talk about religion or politics, right? Because there are conversations that you're almost dicing around a very strange area where people get very, very passionate about these and they're very personal issues. And so I feel it's kind of a great way of being able to kind of just step back, let that person vent their passion, let them express everything they need to express, let them be as vehement as they need to be. And by you accepting all that, they feel like they've been heard. Now, this is a massive thing. To be able to hear someone and just let someone express themselves is an amazing gift. And it's really felt, and you'll find that the next time, if you can practice doing that, the next time you have it, and then that person's sort of spoken themselves out, there's a peace and there's a calm in the air because that energy, that kind of, I wouldn't say negative energy, but that high octane energy that is kind of like burning its way out of their body, out of their physique, out of their self, out of their psyche, out of everything. They need to express themselves. And once someone's done that, there becomes this calm, like within the vicinity, within the area that you're in, there's this calm. Now you can either choose then to steer the conversation somewhere else if you're finding it uncomfortable, if you're not really sure about it. You can either say that, or you can come from, my perspective on this is this, and I'll tell you why, so that you can explain to them how you've come to a conversation point before you've got there, before you've expressed your point. You can also explain to them that you're not challenging them. You just have a different perspective to them. Depending on, how important it is to you, I think, to be heard. It would depend on how passionate you are about speaking back to them. But certainly that's something that I've learned to do over here, is to actually just sit back, just allow what's going on to happen, and then to interject. Because ultimately speaking, to that guy in the shop, I'm the person that wants it for my own reasons. So he can talk to my husband above my head, but my husband's not going to know anything about it. And so what my husband's learned to do as well, recognizing that I'm kind of, getting all steely bodied and getting a little bit prickly up the spine, because I'm asking them a question and they're directing all their answers back to my husband, is to just remain passive, remain calm, absorb all the information. Yep, yep, yep. and then kind of just to distract himself with something else. So then he'll go off and he'll start fiddling, like say we're in a hardware store, he'll start fiddling with some chains or something and asking how much these are and that sort of thing. Then I then go back and ask, what it is that I need to know, following on from the information that we've been given. And that way, the guy in the shop actually realizes that, these might not even be two people together particularly. They might just be, because that's the assumption when you find two foreigners together in Thailand, that they are together. That's the assumption, whether it's one foreign guy and one foreign woman, if they're a couple. If it's two foreign guys, well, they're together, they're shopping together. That is the overall idea. So it becomes quite funny sometimes when you're in a shop and they're giving information to the wrong person because they assume that as a Westerner you're there together. But it's made me a lot more patient. It's enabled my husband to enable me, which was something that we hadn't ever come across in our relationship before, was actually playing this other game of him being the passive one and me being, the person going forward. A lot of the times now he goes and does stuff because it's literally got to that point where, it's like there's just no point in me going in and asking. I'm wasting my breath. I'm wasting my own energy. I could be doing something else while he goes and gets all the stuff because we know how it's going to go. So I wouldn't say that we've solved the problem as such. But for ourselves, we have, the way we work within this vicinity, within this sphere, within this Thai bubble that we live in when we're here. That certainly has kind of helped open our eyes to that and opened our efficiency to be able to deal with that as a couple. So one of the things that I wanted to really mention as well, I think this time just being back in Thailand, was how much space I was given here to connect with my own spirituality. And I think a lot of that I've been trying to kind of put down over the last couple of days in notes for today about why that would be. And obviously there's the things like their religion is very much more widely practiced over here, whether they're Muslim, Buddhist, Christian, all the religions are quite tolerant of the others over in Thailand. Like Buddhists will live quite happily with alongside Muslim Thais. They do tend to kind of segregate off a little bit just for ease and convenience or anything else. But when you're living in Thailand, you could be living in Bangkok, for example, you have a Muslim Thai living next door to you and a Buddhist Thai on the other side of you, and you're the Farang in the middle, or you're the foreigner in the middle. One of the things that I loved about being here and trying to find my spiritual self was the level of acceptance that you're given for being a foreigner in any one of those mediums. I have a friend who was a Muslim guy who came over here, who went to temple over here, and he was welcomed with open arms because he was, Muslim, in the religion that and been able to listen to the mantra chanting, being able to take part in some of the ceremonies, and I felt very, very blessed to be able to have had those ceremonies and being able to be a part of all that sort of stuff. There's not much you can do in a patriarchal society as a woman without a man following you around. But what I found was that actually to go into temple and to pray on my own, actually I had people come up to me and ask if I would like a blessing. I've had people come up to me and take me to a quieter place where or to a special place in a temple where I didn't even know existed, but they've got like a whole little room for silent prayer or for quiet prayer or for, meditating time, that sort of thing. And I've actually had that experience, which has been amazing. Certainly meditating in a monastery was one of the most beautiful experiences. The level of calm and energy and high vibration permeates. You can feel it permeating your skin and into your body. It's like sometimes when you walk into a church. I don't know if anyone's had this experience. I used to have it when I was young, and my grandma used to take my sister and I to do the holy dusting, and we used to go to her local church, and she was a member of the church, C of E, Church of England, and we used to go, and every Saturday morning we would do the dusting, and we would go there, my sister, and every time we walked through those doors, I would feel that peace and that energy that comes with prayer and with connection, with faith. And it's, I've experienced it in many different places. I've experienced it in a cave in India. I've experienced it in churches, in temples, up the top of the mountains. That place where people go and people have gone for years and years and years to devote themselves to something that's higher than them. And when you go into one of those places, you can really feel, I think, the faith and the hope and the recognition of a higher being. a higher consciousness, a higher something, a divinity that, you know, is as strong as it is peaceful, or as peaceful as it is strong. And it's just one of those feelings that I'm sure you can kind of identify with, that when you're going somewhere, you can feel that sense. You can feel that sense of consciousness. And I think one of the things that has been so precious for me living here and exploring my own spirituality here is the space that the Thai people have given me to be able to do that. So I've been, you know, walking down beaches, and I will have found a little place, a little nook in a tree, for example. There's a local beach near us, and there's this old tree that grows sort of, it's kind of an old, I don't know if it's a mangrove tree or what it is really, but it's this old tree and it's got this big nook out of it, like that's the size of me when I sit down. So I was kind of like, this looks like it could be a good little meditation spot, you know. You can sit in there and the water actually laps up and around it until, you know, it comes over and into it. So you can kind of begin, when the tide's out, you can wade out to it. You can sit in the nook of this tree. And I've spent many, well, moments, hours meditating there, and just allowing, and just until the water touches the soles of my feet. So that means it's come up, it's come over. It's probably, you know, I've been to a point where it's kind of been over an hour or so where I've been sitting there, and the water's just come in, and I've suddenly become aware, from being aware of nothing, I've suddenly become aware of another force around me. And but yeah, that was pretty special for me here as well, being able to tell myself that feeling the same thing, feeling that divinity around me through nature as well, and having that space again, like, you know, so many people walking past the beach, looking at this funny little Farang girl who's wedged herself in the hole in a tree, and she's got her eyes closed and she's keeping perfectly still. Like, I know Thai people, they're going to think I'm mental. You know, they're going to be literally laughing, and they'll be pointing and they'll be laughing, and they'll be, you know, showing everybody, and they'll probably go back to the village and get other people just to check me out because, you know, it's the funniest thing that they've seen in a long time. And I, you know, as much as I have loved the space, so I now love that about them, that they will do it all from afar because they wouldn't dream of disturbing you. For whatever reason, you've sat yourself in that tree and you've closed your eyes and you're taking yourself within, and for whatever reason, they will just leave you there, which is pretty special, I think. You know, that's a pretty special thing for a culture, not to be kind of, excuse me, you know, are you okay? Or what are you doing? Or, you know, any of those sorts of things I think I'd get in England, or I just, you know, would get disturbed constantly in England. I haven't found a quiet place that I've been able to kind of spend a couple of hours on my own without anybody, you know, coming anywhere near me where I felt self-conscious or anything like that. So that, you know, I'm still looking for that. That's cool. But one of the things that I've got also, I'm sorry, I've got a little squirrel or a little chipmunk or something running across the side, just coming to my vision. Keeps coming into, we've got a bar area here, keeps coming into the bar area and shooting out again. And one of the other things that I found amazing was being able to turn to their sense of spirituality and their sense of faith for my own gains, really. I lost all three of my grandparents when we were living over here. And my nana was, she suffered from Alzheimer's for the last 5 years of her life. My granddad suffered quite badly physically in the last sort of 18 months of his life. And my grandma, my final grandma, was married to my granddad, died really of a broken heart. She didn't want to be here anymore, but she was suffering a little bit of dementia. She passed as well. And I was only able to go to my granddad's funeral. I wasn't able to go to either my grandma's or my nana's, which hit me very, very hard. We weren't financially able for me to come back to that. I wanted to be there so much for my nana because I knew that, you know, because she'd had Alzheimer's for the last 5 years, she'd fallen off her social circuit. Not many people would have kept in touch with her. You know, it was going to be a very small affair, her funeral, and I couldn't bear that for my nana because she was such a social person. And so I did as much as I possibly could to try to be there. Like funeral parlours in England now, you can even log in live and, you know, be there throughout the service. I tried to do that, and the internet here was just so appalling at the time that I couldn't ever get on. It wouldn't even let me make a connection, which I, you know, put myself through hell and back for. You know, why didn't I go somewhere else? Why didn't I fly? Why didn't I go? Why wasn't I there? Why? So much guilt for not being able to be there for her. And a similar thing for my grandma. You know, I just felt like, again, the last of my older generation in my family had passed, and I just wasn't there. I wasn't, you know, I'd seen her before she died, and she'd said to me that, you know, like I told her that I'd be going back to Thailand, and you know that I hope to see her again, you know, soon, and you know I wanted her to stay strong, and I wanted her to keep eating all the food that they were giving her, and you know all that sort of stuff. And she passed just a couple of 6 weeks after I last saw her. I don't think she had any intention of staying around. I think when my granddad left, she was very much, you know, looking to give up, and looking to let go and just join him. And so it wasn't so much a surprise, but again, I couldn't get back. I couldn't get back to sort of to go through the funeral and to go through that with my family. And having cried for my nana, and having cried for my grandfather, and having cried for my grandma, I realised that one of the things that I hadn't done actually was have any kind of a ceremony of letting go for myself. And I decided to make a little bit of a ritual for myself so that I could celebrate them in Thailand, wherever I was, and at home especially. So I thought about what it is that I would like to make this ritual out of. And this is something that you can do for yourself whenever you want to let go of anything. So I decided that I wanted to make some sort of a pilgrimage, something that would require effort, real energy spent on focusing my whole self on the task in hand, which was to celebrate the life of my grandparents. So I decided we've got a temple near here called Wat Tam Suh, which is a tiger temple, they call it. The Wat is temple and Tam Suh is tiger, Tam is a dwelling. It's where a tiger used to live there until about 40 years ago. And a lone monk went to live at the cave where this one tiger was hiding out from all the poachers and all the people that wanted to kill him from the village. And the monk basically stayed there with the tiger in harmony and asking everybody to leave the tiger alone until the tiger passed on, which is an amazing story. And one of protection and one of remembrance. And I kind of felt like, okay, that would be a really good thing to do, is to go to Wat Tam Suh, go to the Tiger Temple. And they have built a part of the monastery is up on the top of one of the karst mountains that Krabi is famous for. Like you saw the mountain range here. These are called karst mountains. They're limestone mountains that have been sort of worn away through the ice age, and that some of them are like 160 million years old. And so on top of one of these mountains, at the bottom of where the cave was with the tiger and the monk, on the top of that mountain, they have built a shrine. And so it's 100, I think, was it 1,600 and something steps, 632 steps or something like that to get up there. And it's a sheer climb, like it's full on, you know, and even I'm quite short. I'm only 5'2", just under. And so for me, with my little legs, you know, some of them is proper, you know, lifting your knees up above like chest height and kind of pulling yourself up. And it's full on, and it takes about 40 minutes to climb these steps. And that's for me, you know. I'm sure people have made it quicker, and I'm sure people have made it like longer. So it took me, I started at 5 o'clock that one morning, and I went up to the top of Wat Tam Suh, and I drove there. It was dark, and I took with me things that reminded me of my grandparents. Some songs that we used to sing. My grandma was very much into musicals, and my nana loved to dance, and my granddad would always talk to me about, you know, how important it was to respect other people, and stuff like that. So I just took little tokens of them with me as well. So I took a scarf, I took something to sit down on so that I could sit and spend some time up there. I took some food because my grandma and nana were always stuffing food down my throat. Now, as we were growing up, grandma's always trying to feed you. So I took some of that as well, and got up to the top of the temple, and the sun was just beginning to rise. And I decided that probably the best thing to do was just to talk to them. Just to talk openly to them. Once I got up to the top of the temple, I really didn't know what my next move was going to be. It was weird. I kind of thought, no, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to Wat Tam Suh. I'm going to have a whole morning of thinking about, remembering, and that sort of thing. And when I got up to the top there, I was, first of all, very, very out of breath. Second of all, had been freaked out a little bit by the monkeys on the way up. And I got up there and I just sort of thought to myself, what am I going to do now? You know, how am I going to make this work? And I decided that one of the things that I could do while I was literally up in the clouds, because I was literally up in the clouds, in fact, the clouds were lower than me at that time of the day. They were still rising. One of the things that I could do was to talk to them and just talk openly to them, much like I would talk, you know, now to God or to the universe or whoever it is that, you know, I'm calling on. So I sat down and I closed my eyes and had my scarf around me just to keep me a little bit warm and just to make me feel kind of like a little bit little bit homely, you know, like that little protection layer. And I started talking to my nana at first, and I started saying to her, you know, how much I missed her, and you know how guilty I'd felt for not being able to see her more as she got more and more progressively ill, and that I was always trying to remember her as the person that she was when we were growing up, rather than the person that I'd been left with. And that I was sorry that she'd had to suffer all these things and suffer alone, and you know how much I felt, you know, she was still such a part of me from everything that she'd ever told me. And a lot of personal stuff like that, you know, a few little things that I would recount, memories that I could recount to her. And I wept quite openly. I felt like I really expressed something that I needed to say, you know, like stuff that you don't necessarily tell anybody. And I'd been able to speak to my nana up until she died. You know, she was still a physical person. She was still talking. She would still, you know, touch my face, and when I would go to visit her, she would still touch my face and try to sort of communicate, even though she didn't recognize who I was and she didn't recognize much language towards the end. She would still try to, you know, come towards me. And so for me to be able to express the upset that I felt for what she went through, for me to be able to express the guilt that I felt for not really being there in her last years, when I felt like, you know, I was living my life and bringing my children up and everything over here. I was a very long way away. And all that sort of thing enabled me. I was talking openly to my nana and talking to her about all the upset and all the hurt and everything. And I don't think I ever realised until I got to that point how much I'd been holding on to and how negative it all was. Because once I'd spoken it out to her, out to the universe, at the top of this mountain, in the middle of the clouds, I felt like I'd let go of a huge weight. And it gave me the power to continue on and then go to talk to my granddad and tell him how much I respected him and how, you know, how much of a strong influence he'd always been in my life to do the right thing, do the right thing by people, you know, to always go forward with love, you know, rather than with any kind of judgment, with any anger. You know, my granddad, I don't think I ever saw him get angry, ever. You know, he'd been through a world war. He'd been in a Polish prisoner of war camp. You know, he'd obviously experienced a lot. And the thing that he came out with all those sorts of things, I think, was that, you know, nothing is worth getting really, really upset over. You know, nothing is life or death that we're dealing with here. Nothing is that important that you need to get yourself totally worked up and shouting and stressing at children. You just don't need to, you know. And I know he found a lot of happiness in being able to play, you know, that light-hearted play that children have. So I recognized that a lot in my granddad, and I explained to him how much that had helped me communicate with my own children, being able to just let them be, you know, not trying to form them into something, not trying to project my ego onto them, not, you know, feeling like I need to get up and angry straight away with every time when I'm talking to them. That actually there are ways of being able to educate and to discipline without raising your voice and without going straight to kind of, you know, smacking a bum or anything like that, you know, which I've never done. And then from my granddad, I went on to my grandma. And by this stage, you know, I'd been able to say my goodbye to my grandma. So I was kind of like, you know, I know you're going to be up there, Grandma, with Gramps. And, you know, you're going to be really, really happy that you're there because I know how much you missed him. And I just wanted to have a couple of songs with you, really, because my grandma was the one that really introduced my sister and I to musicals. And one of her favourite ones was The Sound of Music. And so I would sing I sang a few songs from The Sound of Music, a couple from Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, you know, all these old musicals that she would always be like, oh, come on, let's sit down, girls, and we'll get a little bit of cake and we'd get a cup of tea and we'd go up into the television room and we'd sit and we'd watch our musicals, and she'd love them just as much as we did. And, you know, and 9 times out of 10, you know, she'd be the one, like, you know, getting us to get up and sing along and all the rest of it. And my sister and I still know all the words off by heart from the, you know, back in those days, you didn't have like cable TV. It was, you would have one DVD, watch that over and over again. That was it. And so, yeah, that was a really special time for me to be able to just let go of all the guilt, all the love that I never felt like I'd expressed, all the things that I'd wanted to say to them, you know, throughout our lives. Like, I came home when I was pregnant with my son from South America, and my grandma and granddad never acknowledged my pregnancy. and we never talked about it. And they only really acknowledged Nathan, my son, when he was here. And suddenly they were cooing over a baby. You know, it was almost like there was nothing to be done anymore. And I found out after they both passed that perhaps one of the reasons for this, and certainly led to a greater understanding of why they couldn't quite discuss it with me, and because at the time I felt like rejected. I was like, God, their granddaughter's return time, she's decided to do this, and they're not even talking to me about it. They won't talk to me about it. We're not mentioning it. It's literally the white elephant in the room, or the white belly in the room, and they just won't discuss with me. And then I found out when they both passed that they had married when my mum, they'd actually had their marriage certificate, they'd altered, or they'd never shown anybody. And they celebrated their marriage a year in advance of what it actually was, because my grandma was pregnant with my mum when she and my granddad got married. And of course, back in those days, my mum's 70 odd now, 70 years ago, that was not the odd fun thing at all. And so they had covered up the pregnancy. They had shotgun wed. They had lied to not only their grandchildren, but all their children about how long they'd been married for, so as not to bring disgrace or anything to the family. Nothing, was ever celebrated. My mum said she always wondered why it was so strange that my grandma and granddad never really celebrated their wedding anniversaries until we got to 60 years. And I think everybody was like, come on, we've got to celebrate something here. But they would never really celebrate. And it suddenly became very apparent why. And that I just said to them all as well that, I understand, from the very little that I know about the situation, why you would have done that. And I feel so sorry for you that you had to go through that period of our history, and had to hide your reality from the people around you for fear of judgment, for fear of hate, for fear of, something backfiring on them, negative energy against the family, negative perspectives against everybody, children and everybody, because that's how it was. I understand all that. And now I feel like I understand why you could never say congratulations, that you could never, because in your heart, you were just so worried about what was going to become of me and what it was going to be like for me. You in this world, in this strange world that they were living in, that they were old people in, and I was 2-3 generations younger, trying to make my own way. They were scared for what their outcome would be. They knew what it would have been for them had it been them in their day. They knew, they dealt with that. What would it be like for me? And so I think that's why they didn't ever say anything, because they couldn't very well criticize, because they'd done something very similar themselves. They couldn't open up to me about that because nobody ever knew. It was a secret that they both believed that they took to the grave. And I think, that in itself is pretty indicative of how perspectives and how judgments and how lack of acceptance and tolerance can shape people's whole lives. The fact that my grandparents were married for 60, I think it was like 69 years or something like that in the end before my granddad died. And they really only celebrated one of their anniversaries. That to me is just so sad, that they had to live with that judgment constantly over them because they were worried about what other people would say. And I just, I think that to me, again, I felt like I was glad that they were relieved of that burden when they both passed on. And I know in their next life, that they will have different challenges, and that maybe the one that they went through together here, won't have to be relived because of the selfless act of them just changing everything so that it could be the way it needed to be, so that nobody else would get hurt because of the decisions that they'd made, because of the consequences of their actions. They were the ones that lived in the silence and without the truth. And everybody else lived in their own little truth world, their own little bubble of this was what happened, that's what happened. It was only when they died that we found out the truth. So that was kind of quite crazy. But that's what's been given to me here. That's that space to be able to be truthful about things, to cry openly, to be able to stand at the top of a mountain on a next to a massive gold Buddha and cry openly and talk out to the universe and not to be judged by anybody. Because there were people around me, as people come up to Wat Tam Suh and go up to the temple as a form of pilgrimage. So people were coming up and around me, and they would have seen this foreign girl with her eyes closed, singing songs that they probably didn't recognize, and chanting and talking out to the universe as the clouds were rising around me. And it was something that I, really recommend being able to do for yourself. If you feel like you need to let go of anything, specifically a ritual is an amazing way of doing it. I then came down, I mean, then the universe gifted me, because I then came down from there and I walked straight into a monastery ceremony, or a monasteric ceremony, and I was invited to sit at the back. It was all men. I was the only woman there. I was invited to sit at the back. So I sat there again with my eyes closed, and listened to everything that they said, and listened to all the mantra, and joined in where I could, where I knew what they were saying. Then when I came out of there, I thought, this has been such an amazing, special day. I felt fabulous. I felt like my ritual for my grandparents couldn't have gone any better, in all honesty. And I thought I wanted to kind of, get a memento of the day, something that would remind me, something that would keep that special feeling with me. It's just something. And so I went to the little, there's kind of all these little stalls around the monastery that sell mala beads, and that sell figurines of Buddha or of Ganesh, or, or whatever. And I decided that I was going to buy myself some mala beads because it would help with my meditation. And so I picked up these mala beads that were made of sandalwood, and they smell absolutely beautiful. And on each one of them, you have either the picture of peace, or you have a picture of Buddha. And so I thought that would be lovely as well. I could feel my way around these mala beads. So you basically, there's 108 beads and a mala string, and you close your eyes and you breathe in and you breathe out, and you're touching one mala bead. And then as you breathe out, you go on to the next one, breathe in, breathe out, go on to the next one, breathe in, breathe out, go on to the next one. And that's how I start going into my meditations, and then about aligning it with my breath and so forth. So I came out there with my mala beads, and then as I was coming out of the little shop, little kind of lean-to hut thing, one of the head monk came over. One of the head monks from the temple came over and started talking to the lady, and the lady would just explain. I think they were talking about me, and the lady explained what it was that I'd done, and I'd come from the temple, and I'd arrived, early this morning because she'd seen me go in, and he took the mala beads from me and did a blessing for them. So he just held them there and said a blessing, and touched them up to his forehead, to his chin, to his chest, and then gave them back to me. And I mean, that was amazing in itself as well. To have a head monk bless something that you've just bought was just super special, and not something that I've ever seen done to any other foreigner, or heard any other foreigner say that they've had done for them. So I felt very, very blessed, and I just literally was walking home on the clouds. I felt like I'd released so much guilt, that I had commemorated my grandparents in a way that was achievable for me to redo. So every time I come back here now, I should do it now that we're here for 2 weeks more, go up to Wat Tamsua and just have a little word with them all, and just say, I'm still remembering you every day. I wear my mala beads often, still use them. I'm still singing the songs Grandma. I'm still dancing Nana, all those sorts of things, and I'm still treating people with love, Gramps. And in that way, I'm able to keep everything that they taught me alive. I'm able to keep them alive in my heart. I'm able to openly respect them wherever I am in the world. I often take my mala beads with me to have my grandparents there, just so that I remember, like, the start of anything. Start of new classes, the start of new retreats, the start of anything that I do. I have my mala beads with me always at the very beginning. I fly with them, all those sorts of things, just to have those guys, just to have my spirits with me and on board. And it's, a real special thing that I've done, and then nobody over here judges me for, because I can't imagine doing it in the UK. That's the thing in the UK. I've gone back to kind of going to the graveyard, going to where we scattered my granddad's ashes, going to where my grandma and my nana, are scattered as well. And trying to talk to them there, but being very conscious of everybody else around me, being very conscious of, I don't know, just a judgment, I suppose, because religion's been so lost in the UK, and faith has gone into other things. Faith has gone into, I don't know where faith has gone into. Faith has gone into musicians. Faith has gone into actors. Faith and worship has gone into internet icons, YouTubers, that sort of thing. It's very hard to fathom, really. And I think it's a great shame, because certainly what the Thais have over here in terms of their faith is not belittled by anybody. It's respected by everybody. And if you try to touch in using your own faith, they respect it, because they know how valuable it is for them. And I think kind of, that's something that I certainly will always love about coming back here. and being able to practice openly here. We have all Muslim staff at Eden, and yet I've had pictures of Buddha up where I've, had my yoga sala, and they've always been very respectful of that, always dusting and cleaning and all that sort of thing. They will respect anybody else's religion who comes up here. Likewise, we respect theirs. We've had blessings on the land that have been Muslim blessings because we're part of a Muslim village here and our staff are all Muslim. So it was important for us to be able to respect that Muslim tradition of blessing the land and blessing the place that they work. We've done that for them. And we've done the same thing with having monks come up and bless the land as well, because one of our members of staff is Buddhist. And we felt that it was important living in, a Buddhist and Muslim place, and my husband and I both feeling that our own spiritual path tends to be more Buddhist in its ethics than Muslim. So we felt like that was a nice thing to do as well. And yeah, I think just being able to have the space, being able to have that support to be able to explore your spirituality is a real gift. It's not easy to do in Western world, I don't think. If you have a great church and you've always been brought up in that, with that religion around you, I think that's fabulous. I really think that you gain a lot of strength from religion. You hear so many people who are famous, who have got to really successful points in their life, citing their devotion to God and their gratitude to God for everything that they've had and everything that they've got. And yet that seems to have been lost filtering down, which I feel like is a shame. And it's really a very big privilege to be able to practice your spiritual practice over here and not be judged, and be able to do it wherever you are, whether you're on the beach, whether you're up a mountain, whether you're in the middle of the field, whether you are, practicing moving meditations, whatever it is that you're doing. I've never found judgment over here, which has been amazing. So those are some of the things that I kind of have really enjoyed coming back to Thailand for, and some of the parts of my life perhaps that were significantly changed by being in Thailand, and by having my children here, having a family here, having that acceptance, having that care, that love, being able to be peaceful enough and at one enough in nature to be able to absorb nature fully, from the tiniest little ants to the birds and the monkeys, and who constantly find habitat on the mountain, and being able to just watch and enjoy them, listen to how they converse, listen to and what they do, the times of the day when they come awake. When I hear the gibbons wake up in the morning, the sun's coming up over the mountain. It will be over the land shortly. The gibbons have started to call. I know that now. When the insects, as I say, and I start my meditation at 5 a.m., the insects are very, very low. When it gets after about an hour or so, and again, the heat of the day is beginning to rise, so their pitch rises. Being able to recognize all those things. And it starts from being able to take a breath of fresh air, stepping outside your door and being able to take a breath of fresh air, closing your eyes, not being able to hear motorbikes or cars or aeroplanes or trains or anything else, and just being able to breathe clean air and to hear natural sounds, and to be able to sit in that and let yourself be in that and just relax really in nature and allow it to come to you. Because the other thing that I found, having had that attitude up at the land, we have a lot of things like snakes and scorpions and all those sorts of things. Scorpions, I found, run over my feet. They don't come and attack you. These creatures aren't out to get you. They're not vicious. They are just defending themselves, protecting themselves in an area or in a confrontational point where they feel like they are the smaller animal, which they are. And so I've had such amazing experiences up here, particularly with snakes, which might sound a bit freaky, but I've had green tree snakes slither down right next to me, and shoot off into the, just shoot off and past me. No one's interested. I'm sitting there, I'm meditating, I'm sitting there, I'm doing my yoga, I'm lying down at the end, and I'm looking up towards the roof of my yoga sala, and I've seen snakes slithering along, stopping, coming down, coming near me within a foot of me, not interested at all, slithering off. I've had all manner of insects crawl up and all over me and just go on their way. I've had at snakes again, where I've gone into a villa to check for a customer, and I found a snake there, and I know that, you know, the customer's going to be back any minute. I haven't got any stout on the land. I'm going to have to get rid of this snake myself. And I've done it by just going, shoo, go on. They won't like you here. You know, like these funny little conversations that you have with nature. And when the snake sort of come up, reared up, and then calm down because it's noticed that I'm not coming anywhere near it, but I'm just, shh, you know, and making noises, clapping, vibrations in the air, you know, so that perhaps they can feel that. And then the snake's it's taken itself off, and it's gone off, and it's gone well off. And I followed it out into the jungle, and I haven't scared it. It hasn't turned around. It's just gone, and then it's gone. And like I say, you know, like times of my life where I would have been so paralyzed with fear at seeing a snake at such close quarters, or having a scorpion touch me, you know, like I wouldn't be one to hold a scorpion in my hand, and yet I've had them when I've been sitting out at dinner, one just crawl over my foot. When I've been putting the washing out, another one just crawl over the other foot. You know, I've come to the point where I, you know, almost trodden on one and then stepped back, and the scorpion's just gone on its way. You know, I've stood there and it's just walked on its way. It hasn't even raised its tail, you know, and this is the thing. I honestly believe that if you go to nature with an open heart and acknowledge that, you know, you're in it as much as it's around you, you know, then you can develop this peace whereby animals don't attack you. Things don't attack you for no reason. If they feel threatened, if you're coming at them with a, you know, something hard, or you're moving fast and quickly towards them, they're going to feel threatened. They're going to feel like they're being attacked, as would you if someone was you quickly, you know, in reactions they would. So I feel like, you know, that's something that I've learned as well, is actually just have an open heart and a calm, kind nature towards nature. And, you know, you'll find that you get on a lot better with it. There's not so much to fear, that actually nature would rather we all lived in harmony. There's very few encounters that I've had where I felt like, oh, that went for me. And you know what it's actually been? It's been the ants, like the red ants over here, like massive. And they'll properly go for you. If they think that you might be a little bit of food, or if they think that you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, they will literally come and they will go like that. And they will hang on with their bums hanging in the air, and they're hanging onto you with their pincers, and you pick them. So now they'll get me often on my feet, and I'll pick them up from the side of their body, and I won't hurt them, and I just gently pull them off, and they let go after a while, and it hurts, don't get me wrong, it hurts, but I'm not going to hurt them because I know that this is part of their nature, right? And I put it down on the floor and on the table, and I'll just sit calm, and they'll come back over and try and attack me again, at which point I just like move out the way and recognize that I'm the bigger being. But you know, like that's the only animal I think that I've ever had that actually outright attacks me. So yeah, crazy. But so living in Thailand has been good and bad. There's been a lot of things that I've had to go without. There's been a lot of things that I have found like such peace and tranquility in. And certainly in terms of my spiritual self, this definitely feels like much more of my home, to be out in nature, to be up against the mountain, to be around life, to be able to hear it, to be able to experience it at any time of the day, to feel comfortable enough with it that having a bee buzzing around my head, having a chipmunk running under my feet, having snakes come close to me and slither past me, you know, I feel like I'm comfortable enough with nature now to be able to allow that all to happen. And I thank nature for that, for giving me the opportunity to learn from it, so that I can really take that and give that to my children. And hopefully, you know, they've all grown up out here. They walk around no shoes on. They know the dangers of that, but they choose to just walk barefoot in nature and keep an eye out for nature. We don't want to hurt it as much as it doesn't want to hurt us. So that's our attitude. And so far, touch wood, touch coconuts, we've you know, we've never had any bad experiences up here. In fact, we've only ever had positive ones. So I thank nature for that as well. I think I've talked enough. Thank you so much for listening. As always, ever grateful for anyone who's tuned in. And I hope that, you know, at some stage today you're able, or tomorrow you're able to get out and to take a breath into nature yourself, and to really, you know, take your shoes off, take your socks off, ground yourself deeply in nature, and allow yourself to connect to your natural world as spiritually as you can, and just to allow yourself to really breathe into your heart and to quieten your mind and just to listen to what's going on around you in the natural world, because long after we're gone, all this will still be happening. And I hope that, we don't ever make too big a mark on it, that it won't be able to come and bring itself back completely. Because I fear that sometimes man makes so many dents that someone somewhere will, at some stage, you won't be able to tap them out, and I really hope and pray that that doesn't happen. So peace, love and unity for all. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.
Humanity has been on an epic journey of discovery, learning the truth about the world we live in. New discoveries about the true origins of humanity, ancient history, free energy, as well as the systematic corruption of world governments are now on the forefront of our daily reality. Is the world headed towards destruction based on control and power? Or is an opportunity now being presented to shift and uplift into a higher consciousness? My name is Mel V, co-founder and creative director of Conscious Consumer Network, an independent broadcast network that was launched on the 1st of January 2015. In the last 3 years, Conscious Consumer Network has broadcast over 2,800 shows in multiple languages, featuring guests from across the world, whilst creating media that is aimed at the creation of a free, fair, peaceful, just, sustainable world. Conscious Consumer Network provides full training and an interactive support network for all broadcasters, and we are always looking for inspiring and educational content.
Hi, this is Lady Liberty.
And this is Miro Siegel.
In 2018, Conscious Consumer Network has expanded to multiple broadcast locations, increasing our availability and reach across the world, remaining on the cutting edge of independent media. If we wish to create a better world, we must first create better media, geared towards real education instead of indoctrination.
You guys really are what changing the world is going to be about. It's educating kids at a grassroots level.
Having become a pillar of stability in the turbulent world of independent media, we have even more going on in 2018. Conscious Consumer Network is a publicly funded network, and we rely on all of you to keep us on the air. Show your support for independent media by donating to our 2018 Network Support Fund. Dare to seek a better world. Support independent media.